The world was changing, and few understood the magnitude of the shift happening right before their eyes. On this crisp March morning, the global trade landscape was being redrawn not with diplomatic pens, but with electric vehicle batteries, solar panels, and strategic industrial policy. At the epicenter of this transformation was China, a nation that had been meticulously laying the groundwork for this moment over decades. What appeared to be a sudden economic pivot was, in reality, the culmination of a carefully orchestrated long-term strategy that began in the early 1990s. The long game. In 2001, when China joined the World Trade Organization, few could have predicted the industrial powerhouse it would become. The country wasn't content to be the world's factory for cheap goods. Instead, it set its sights on something far more ambitious, controlling the future of global energy and transportation. The turning point came in 2009 when the Chinese government made a bold declaration. They would go all in on new energy vehicles, NEVs, a comprehensive term encompassing battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and fuel cell technologies. This wasn't just talk. They backed their vision with a staggering $230 billion investment over the next decade and a half. Strategic mandates and industrial planning. The government didn't just provide funding, they created a robust ecosystem for EV production. Automakers were given clear mandates: achieve 20% NEV sales by 2025, or face consequences. Cities like Jinhua transformed into dedicated EV production zones, where entire industrial complexes emerged, dedicated to electrifying transportation. Companies like Leap Motor and BYD weren't just manufacturing vehicles. They were rewriting the rules of automotive economics. A Leap Motor TO3, priced at a mere $8,200, made electric mobility accessible in ways Western manufacturers could only dream of. By 2022, BYD had already overtaken Tesla, selling 3 million NEVs in 2023 alone. Beyond vehicles, an energy ecosystem. But this was never just about cars. China was building a comprehensive green energy ecosystem. While the United States and Europe were engaged in political rhetoric about climate change, China was actively constructing it. In 2023, they commissioned more solar capacity than the entire world had in the previous year. They controlled 75% of global wind farm installations and held a dominant 60% of the world's lithium-ion battery market. These weren't just statistics. They were the building blocks of a new global energy infrastructure. The geopolitical chess match. By March 2025, the implications were becoming clear. With the return of Trump to the White House and mounting trade tensions, China found itself at a strategic crossroads. The potential for 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs echoed past trade conflicts, but China was prepared. Instead of capitulating, they were pivoting. Markets in Southeast Asia, Africa, and parts of the global South were becoming their new frontier. If the West wanted to close its doors, China would simply find new markets, new opportunities. A technological and economic inflection point. The numbers told a compelling story. China had already achieved 51% NEV sales by July 2024, smashing their own 2027 targets. Domestic demand was insatiable, with over 6.6 million cars selling in 2024, many benefiting from substantial government subsidies. Companies like BYD were not just selling cars. They were exporting a vision of technological innovation. Advanced driving systems were now being offered at no extra cost, sparking a technological arms race that left traditional automakers scrambling. The broader implications. This was more than an industrial transformation. It was a fundamental reshaping of global economic power. China was demonstrating that the future of technology, energy, and transportation would be defined not in Washington or Brussels, but in cities like Shenzhen, Beijing, and Jinhua. As the world watched, one thing became increasingly clear. The global economic order was being rewritten, and China was holding the pen. The numbers were stark and undeniable. China's automotive landscape had transformed almost overnight. In February 2025, car sales were up 13% year over year, with an astonishing 48% of those being new energy vehicles, NEVs. This wasn't just a trend, it was a revolution in motion. The rise of domestic champions. The new automotive landscape was populated by names that would have been obscure just a few years earlier. BYD's Dynasty lineup was now offering advanced self-driving features that made Tesla's autopilot look antiquated. Geely's Jingyuan was surging, with 28,146 sales in January. Even more surprisingly, Xiaomi, once known only for smartphones, had sold 23,928 electric vehicles in February, just a year after launching their first car. The Global South, a new battlefield. As the United States and Europe erected trade barriers, China found its strategic opportunity. The markets of Southeast Asia and Africa were not just alternative destinations. They were becoming the primary battleground for global technological dominance. In Thailand, BYD's manufacturing plant in Rayong was churning out electric vehicles targeting a region hungry for affordable green technology. The ports of Shanghai were loading ships bound for Kenya, where EV sales had already jumped 15% in 2023. This wasn't just export, it was strategic market expansion. The tariff trap and China's counter. The economic landscape was shifting dramatically. The United States had imposed 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, maintaining 100% duties on Chinese EVs. Europe wasn't far behind, with their 376% provisional tariff becoming permanent. Canada had matched the U.S. with 100% tariffs, but China was not retreating. Instead, they were strategically redirecting. Imagine the streets of Jakarta filled with affordable Chinese electric vehicles. Picture Lagos markets flooded with Chinese batteries. This was not just a trade pivot, it was a calculated geopolitical maneuver. The numbers tell the story. The scale was breathtaking. China's EV exports had surged an incredible 13,300% from 2017 to 2023, reaching $42 billion. While Reuters predicted zero growth for 2025 due to tariffs, the domestic market told a different story. Government subsidies were driving unprecedented domestic demand. In 2025, over 12 million NEVs were projected to be sold, a 20% increase from 2024. Meanwhile, gas car sales were expected to tank by 10%, dropping below 11 million units. The industrial transformation. The contrast was becoming painful for traditional automotive markets. BYD's performance told the real story. A 73% profit leap in Q4 2024, while Tesla struggled with plummeting sales in China. Europe. No safe haven. Even Europe wasn't immune. EV sales had dropped 3% in 2024 to 3 million units. Germany's tax breaks had vanished, and the UK had overtaken them in battery electric vehicle sales. Yet, Chinese manufacturers like BYD were still gaining ground, even establishing manufacturing plants in Spain as a strategic workaround. The deeper game. This was about more than cars. China controlled 73% of the global plug-in hybrid market in January 2025. They held 60% of lithium-ion battery exports and 88% of rare earth elements critical to EV production. The West wanted a green transition, but China was holding all the keys. A new economic doctrine. What was unfolding was nothing short of a radical reimagining of global trade. China wasn't just responding to tariffs. They were fundamentally redesigning global economic flows. The markets of Asia, Africa, and the Global South were becoming the new center of technological innovation and economic power. The trade war wasn't just about electric vehicles. It was about rewriting the rules of global economic engagement, and China was just getting started. The world was about to witness a geopolitical masterstroke that would reshape global energy dynamics forever. Canada's newly elected Prime Minister Mark Carney had just announced a deal that would send shockwaves through the international energy market. A complete redirection of oil exports bypassing the United States entirely and flowing directly to China. The Canadian Gambit. Estimated at $30 billion, this wasn't just a trade deal. It was a strategic realignment that would fundamentally alter the North American energy landscape. Massive tankers would now steam from Alberta to Vancouver and across the Pacific, carrying Canadian crude directly to Chinese markets. The move caught the Trump administration completely off guard. While they were busy imposing 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, they had failed to see the larger strategic play unfolding before their eyes. The electric and energy convergence. China's electric vehicle strategy was now intersecting directly with its energy diplomacy. The country was projected to hit 20 million EV sales in 2025, a 17% increase from the previous year. More critically, their domestic market had already crossed a pivotal threshold. 49% of light-duty vehicles were now electric or plug-in hybrids, outpacing traditional gasoline cars for the first time in history. A tale of contrasting fortunes. The numbers painted a stark picture of diverging technological capabilities. United States, EV market share stuck at 21%, Europe, flat at 21%, China, approaching 50% electric vehicle penetration. This wasn't just a market difference, it was a fundamental technological and industrial divide. The supply chain stranglehold. China's dominance extended far beyond vehicle production. Their battery plants in Ningde were producing 60% of the world's lithium-ion cells. Solar farms in Xinjiang were set to feed 55% of their grid by 2035, a dramatic increase from 30% just a few years earlier. But the real power lay in their control of critical resources. China held 88% of rare earth elements, the crucial components for EV motors and batteries. Their hydrogen infrastructure was equally impressive, controlling 40% of global refueling stations. The Global South, a new economic frontier. While the West imposed tariffs, China was busy building alternative markets. Nairobi's streets were now filled with BYD Song Plus models. Vietnam saw 30,000 electric vehicle sales in 2023, backed by Chinese technological infrastructure. The potential trade collapse. Financial analysts were now openly discussing a potential collapse in U.S.-China trade by 2026. China held $690 billion in U.S. import leverage, and they were not afraid to use it as a strategic tool. The automotive sector told the most dramatic story. While General Motors celebrated 114,000 EV sales in 2024, BYD had sold 3 million in 2023. Tesla's sales in China had plummeted to a mere 26,977 units in February. Beyond trade, a power shift. This was more than an economic realignment. It was a fundamental restructuring of global power dynamics. By securing alternative energy routes through Canada, developing comprehensive green technology infrastructure, and creating new market ecosystems, China was effectively checkmating traditional Western economic models. The broader implications. Experts were now seriously questioning the future of American trade dominance. China's strategy wasn't just about replacing existing markets. It was about creating entirely new economic architectures. The green energy transition was no longer a future possibility. It was happening now, and China was firmly in control of its direction. A new world order. As March 25, 2025 drew to a close, one thing became abundantly clear. The global economic order had fundamentally and irrevocably changed. The next chapter of human technological and economic development would be written not in Washington or London, but in the innovation centers of Beijing, Shenzhen, and Ningde. The world was watching, and nothing would be the same again.